I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, it looks like the U.S. Embassy won't be moving from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem anytime soon. Israeli designers make a modest fashion statement, and Israel receives some major recognition in the startup world. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. During his campaign for office, U.S. President Donald Trump announced his intentions to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But since taking office, the contentious issue has become even more nuanced, and it looks like it's moving to the administration's back burner. The latest remarks about the matter are coming from U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. Here's what he had to say during his address about the White House approach to the Israeli-Palestinian peace process while speaking at the annual Republican-Jewish Coalition in Las Vegas.
We're also reviewing additional steps to demonstrate America's support, including assessing whether the American embassy in Israel should be relocated to Jerusalem. And President Trump is personally invested in forging a lasting peace in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Under President Trump, let me assure you, America will support the negotiation process, but as the President said, any agreement must be reached by both sides, and where there will undoubtedly have to be compromises, know this: the Trump administration will never compromise the safety and security of the Jewish state of Israel.
Pence also stressed the Trump administration's steadfast commitment to Israel and specifically failed to mention the two-state solution as the preferred way to resolve the conflict. Turning to Iran, the vice president vowed the hardline Islamic Republic will never obtain a nuclear weapon with which it could threaten the Jewish state, and repeated previous White House statements issued after Tehran's test firing of a ballistic missile in January.
We will stand strong in the face of ongoing provocations and efforts by Iran to destabilize the region across the wider Arab world. President Trump already put the leading state sponsor of terrorism on notice, and we told the Ayatollahs in Tehran that they should check the calendar. There's a new president in the Oval Office, and his name is Donald Trump.
The first official Israeli mission to Australia by a sitting prime minister has ended today, with what may be enormous implications on a future two-state solution. A source close to the prime minister reported that during Netanyahu's meeting with the Australian foreign minister this morning, the Israeli leader allegedly stated that Israel would never relinquish security control over a Palestinian state. ILTV's Aaron Porras joins us with more details. Aaron, why did the prime minister make this statement?
So according to the source that you just mentioned, Netanyahu allegedly says that the international community has failed to protect Israel from her neighbors so many times that security control, full security control of the West Bank is necessary. And let's turn now to my report for more.
Netanyahu's statement was supposedly in response to Bishop's inquiry into what Netanyahu meant by supporting a Palestinian state. Over the course of Netanyahu's 5-day trip to Australia, he also met with Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, opposition leader Bill Shorten, and several other Australian leaders. Several leaders, like Bishop and opposition MP Bill Shorten, raised questions on Israel's settlement policy, support for a two-state solution, Iran, and more. During the meeting with Parliament member Shorten made sure to address reiterated support from his party to the two-state solution. He said, quote, "We want to see Israel safe and secure of its borders, and we support the rights of the Palestinian people to have their own state. We express the view very clearly and unambiguously that settlements and their expansion are a roadblock to peace that is damaging to the peace process." End quote. Despite the questioning and the occasional protest, Netanyahu still described his diplomatic visit as wonderful.
Controversy continues to surround a worker for the Human Rights Watch group who was initially banned from entering Israel after being accused of serving as an instrument of Palestinian propaganda. Even though no effort whatsoever is being taken to limit the operations of HRW's local staff members, the Israeli government initially rejected an application for a New York-based worker to join them.
Human Rights Watch on my behalf applied for a work permit so I could take up my post as Israel and Palestine director on the ground in Jerusalem. After waiting about 6 months for a response from the Israeli Interior Ministry, from whom we asked for the work permit, we received a response on Monday informing us that our request had been denied on the basis that Human Rights Watch was not a real human rights organization, that instead we were engaging in propaganda and falsely raising the banner of human rights.
Despite his record as an active supporter of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel, Shakir claims the allegations were highly unexpected.
The decision came as a shock, not only because we've had for nearly 3 decades regular access to Israel and the West Bank, but also because we regularly correspond and engage with Israeli authorities. And while we've often disagreed on the substance of our findings, we've had a professional working relationship. The type of language they use, dismissing us as propagandists, as fake human rights advocates, really doesn't match our record. The fact that we work on over 90 countries. We cover both sides. We're a nonpartisan independent group. We received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997 for the work that we do, and we're widely known across the world for the credibility of our investigations. But instead of engaging, with the merits of the work that we do, Israel has chosen to block our access and to paint us with this very unfortunate type of smear.
Until now, the group has been granted unimpeded access to Israel and the West Bank for 3 decades. The Israeli decision to bar the new director comes amid increasing efforts to deny discriminatory activity against a Jewish state from being carried out on its own soil. But at least 2 U.S. Jewish groups have objected to the entry refusal, along with the U.S. State Department, which says it strongly disagrees with Israel's characterization of Human Rights Watch, claiming the group is a credible human rights organization. After reconsidering the issue, Israeli government officials now say Shakir will be allowed into the country as a tourist and that his group can reapply for a visa permitting him to work in the country later. Human Rights Watch says it's welcoming the more reconciliatory tone from Jerusalem. A pro-Palestinian protest against Israel's closure of a street in Hebron 23 years ago suddenly erupted into a demonstration against U.S. President Donald Trump. ILTV's Aaron Porras joins me back in the studio with more on the story. Now, Aaron, what does President Trump have to do with this street in Hebron?
Well, the riots in the streets of Hebron by Palestinians and foreign activists alike was just this past Friday, and it marked the anniversary of a terrible attack against praying Palestinians by a Jewish settler. Now, how does Trump fit into the question, to get to your question? Basically, since his campaign, and even more so since his election, Trump has been viewed as very pro-Israel. So he's kind of an extension of the Zionist enemy, so to speak, that they're rioting against.
Arab residents were originally banned from Shuhada Street in 1994, following a violent riot there in the wake of the Hebron Mosque massacre by an Israeli settler, Baruch Goldstein, who killed 29 Palestinian worshippers before being beaten to death by a mob. The street was reopened in the early 2000s, but eventually closed again during further terrorism in the midst of the Second Intifada.
بعد مرور عدة أعوام على مجلس الحرم الإبراهيمي وأيضا الإغلاق المتزايد الذي تتعرض له مدينة الخليل، جئنا هنا لنرفع صوتنا عاليا لنطالب بفتح شارع الشهداء تل رميدة ولنكون مع السكان الصامدين في هذه الأرض.
At this year's protest, participants began chanting slogans against the United States president and hurling shoes at his poster, which is considered one of the worst insults in Arab culture.
Today, we are here to send a message to Trump administration that we exist. We deserve full rights as everybody in the world. We disrespect this president who doesn't see us as equal human beings with everyone. Palestinians will not give up their rights. They will not give up their freedom. As Palestinians, we are working for justice, equality, and self-determination. Today, he will get these shoes, which was made in Hebron. It's Palestinian product. This is a Palestinian product. He will get it in his face, him and anybody supporting him.
Israeli security forces were ultimately called in to break up the protest with crowd dispersal methods, including the firing of tear gas.
The United Nations Human Rights Council is set to host Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Geneva tomorrow at the start of its main annual session that lasts until March 24th. The UNHRC has a lengthy history of targeting the Jewish state, so it's no big surprise the body is critical of the sentence that was just handed down to IDF Sergeant Elor Azaria.
We are deeply disturbed at the lenient sentence that's been given by the Tel Aviv military court earlier this week to an Israeli soldier who was convicted of unlawfully killing a wounded Palestinian in an apparent extrajudicial execution.
As ILTV viewers already know, Azari was ordered to serve 18 months behind bars for killing a Palestinian terrorist who had been wounded while carrying out a stabbing attack against Israeli troops in Hebron last year. The UNHRC claims Palestinian children face far harsher terms of detention for throwing rocks at Israeli civilians, and that the Azaria case risks undermining confidence in the Israeli justice system.
This is a long-standing issue with Israel, and we've been in touch with the Israeli authorities on this issue multiple times over the years. This is a chronic culture of impunity that we're talking about. This is not one individual case. In this case, there actually was a prosecution and a conviction, which is more than we've seen in any of the other cases. However, for a sentence of 18 months to be handed down for such a serious human rights violation is unacceptable.
Israel argues that exactly the opposite is true, and Azalia's conviction for violating the army's code of ethics clearly shows he's being held accountable for his actions, even though the man he killed was undoubtedly a terrorist. Both Jerusalem and Washington point to the UNHRC's record of passing more resolutions against the tiny Jewish state than the rest of the world combined, as proof of its deep bias. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman says the 47-member body has once again demonstrated that in its distorted moral compass, one bullet fired by Azaria at a terrorist is worse than the millions of bullets killing innocents in Syria, Libya, Iraq, and Yemen that the UN fails to condemn. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Dani Danon, echoed that by saying the UN group is completely divorced from reality for sitting silently by as human rights are crushed in Syria and Iran, while criticizing the only true democracy in the Middle East. Israel has 4 new Supreme Court justices, including an Israeli Arab, an Orthodox woman, and a Jewish settler, but all 3 have something in common. They're considered to be conservative. Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked is describing the new appointments as part of her push to recraft the bench into becoming more representative of right-wing Israelis. Shaked and several similarly aligned politicians have been critical of many verdicts recently handed down by the 15-member court. They feel many of the justices have been far too liberal by upholding Palestinian property rights in the West Bank, or even occasionally reversing other laws it deems as illegal. The recent retirement of 4 judges was an ideal opportunity for the Justice Minister to advance her own list of preferred candidates, since she also serves on the selection committee alongside 5 Bar Association representatives and 3 other judges.
אתמול נבחרו 4 שופטים מצוינים ומקצועיים לבית המשפט העליון, שופטים שמייצגים את כלל החברה הישראלית. אני מודה בראש ובראשונה לנשיאה נאור ולכל חברי הוועדה לבחירת שופטים על עבודה מאומצת אינטנסיבית של חודשים רבים שהביאה לתוצאות כאלה טובות ומוצלחות.
While one newspaper's front page headline called the appointments a conservative revolution, some analysts say it's too early to gauge whether the new justices will promote any dramatic changes.
In terms of having a great and significant influence on decisions on constitutional cases, I don't think there will be many of them. But maybe what is important about these judges is that they will be considered as representing the population of Israel in its diversity. And this for itself is important, more in terms of the image, but not in terms of the real work of law, that I think will basically remain within the professional boundaries of a tradition that was before and of a chapter they write for the next generations.
The new conservative justices include a West Bank settler and an Orthodox Jewish woman. The 4th is an Arab judge who Israeli media reports refer to as a compromise candidate who was backed by the Bar Association. This weekend, Israel proved that fashion doesn't always have to be flashy to make a statement, with the first ever modest fashion event for the nation's Orthodox Jewish community. That's right, fashion means different things to different people, and in Israel, a nation where the religious Orthodox and non-Orthodox communities live side by side, clothing can be a divisive issue. On Thursday, Israeli models took to the runway to show off the most colorful trends in the Orthodox world, drawing in hundreds of religious women and fashionistas from across the world.
We are working for this amazing day, Fashion Modest Day, which is a complete amazing experience for us as religious women that we have now stage that we could actually show all our clothing lines and all the beautiful, amazing, talented designers that have finally a stage where they could actually show their new collection and their trends and their, you know, their entire outlook of what fashion is all about.
What we decided to do is to do a special day for religious women, okay, who wear only modest dress, and to do a real fashion show with the red carpet and with the most beautiful dress in the world. So let's start. 1, 2, 3, go. Action.
Only 10% of the Jewish population is Haredi or Orthodox Jewish in Israel, meaning the fashion options for religious women can often be limiting. Many must adhere to strict religious rules that emphasize modesty, meaning clothing options in the mainstream market don't always fit the bill. But don't get it wrong, religious women highly value fashion, especially when it comes to going out on dates to find a husband.
To be religious customer, it's not mean just to be not in fashion. What is very smart and important in our job, that we should take the fashion and to make it as the religious rules going.
The religious sector in Israel has a very strong purchasing power, which is why the Orthodox fashion industry has been growing. Pair that with the fact that trends for more modest clothing have been rising in the international fashion scene, and it's no wonder that over 20 ultra-Orthodox fashion designers participated in this year's first ever Modern Fashion Day.
Is really modest, so people are looking in our direction now to find that modest kind of look, which is very interesting to see it, and people from out of our small communities are coming in now to buy the more modest kind of clothing.
Some of the biggest challenges for Orthodox designers is adjusting fashion trends to modesty demands, but whether it's adding on long sleeves covering elbows or knees or closing up a neckline, most fashionistas claim the end product is always worth it. Israeli technological advances have just garnered even more praise. More than a fifth of the slots on the Fast Company list of the world's most innovative companies have been awarded to the tiny Jewish state. The prominent American business magazine is certainly qualified to make that distinction, given its concentration on technology, business, and design. The 2017 10th edition ranking includes a whopping 11 Israeli companies on its roster of excellence. They were all selected for, quote, tapping both the consumer's heartstrings and purse strings while making a difference in the world. Fast Company's top 50 list includes education, enterprise, and finance categories. Even more amazingly, Israeli firms have earned their very own subsector entirely devoted to achievements in the startup nation. Unsurprisingly, some of the top Israeli companies coming in for special mention include the Waze navigation system and the Unbotify bot detector used to counter cybercrime. Even the Israeli company Weissberger was highlighted, which has introduced innovative analytical solutions to streamline your average pub into becoming a bar of the future. Well, I think we can all toast to that. Dealing with the loss of our loved ones can affect each of us very differently. One of the hardest things in the mourning process is dealing with what happens after the burial process ends. Well, joining me now in the studio is Tovit Naizel, co-founder of the Israeli company Memontage, which has found a way to help you immortalize the lives of your loved ones for generations to come. Tovit, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's begin. Tell us about what you guys have created.
We've created a grief social network. It's a place where everyone can gather after a loss of a loved one and share the memories. They can collect them. It's like a therapeutic tool on the one hand. You gather all the memories of that loved person. It could be all sorts of memories. The songs he loved, the recipes the mother made, the loved movies, things that made them laugh, their sayings and quotes, and share it with others who can in their turn add more memories of that person. So you get a big mosaic of that memory. What we say is that a person gone is the sum of all the memories he left in all the hearts of the people he touched. So then you get a big picture of that. On the other hand, another thing we have is the place where you go, the social network grief, which you can ask questions and you can address strangers or your families and share your tears and your emotions. Many years after that person died.
So now, is this platform, I mean, when you come onto it, is it separated, I guess, into different groups based on the type of loss that you maybe experienced? I mean, how do you necessarily connect with somebody who might be going through a similar type of loss?
We have search options and we have tags. So you can tag all the stories, let's say your beloved died from cancer, so you would tag it cancer, and then you can search through other people who went through the same loss.
How did you guys come up with the idea for this?
Well, after my mom's Shiva, we actually had to because she died abroad, so it took a long time till she came back. I was going through this process that took me very long time to deal with it and process it and cry. And then I thought, what if you have a digital Shiva, having all your friends from wherever who couldn't come to the actual Shiva, who can come many years after or never knew that person. My husband never met my mom, but we still share memories, and I tell my daughters about her. There's so many things I want to say, and I want to give them that legacy that she left, to have some place which is forever.
Now, how many people are currently using this service that you guys have created?
At the moment, we have a closed beta, so we approach people. We have a few hundreds, but this is like a trial. We test it, and we see the response and what they need and what they look for, and then we work on it.
What has the response been? I mean, this is very different than what really exists out there in terms of dealing with grief. I can imagine that people are kind of shocked by the fact that this exists, no?
No, actually, no. They were looking for these things. Some have used digital memorials, but they felt like they were more static and did not answer all their needs. But we do it differently. We have all kinds of memories come together in one place. Like I said, the recipes come together with the song that made them laugh or they sang them off key, and all the photos and all their sayings. Everything is live there, and you actually celebrate their life. It's not a sad place. It's the respectful, the meaningful, and sensitive setting. It's the home for people in grief.
It sounds like you guys have created something that's really going to touch the souls of many people, and I know that, I mean, I probably could have used that too when I lost my grandfather recently, so I think that this sounds like something that could be very therapeutic, and I hope that you guys have a lot of success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you're looking for more information about Memontage or even want to invest in the company, you can actually do that. Just go check out memontage.com. Israeli music fans have yet another reason to celebrate because it looks like the award-winning British rock band Coldplay will be performing in Israel this coming winter. After being spotted out and about in Jerusalem over the weekend, the hit group's frontman Chris Martin sent out a tweet confirming they're in the country. This latest trip is the second in less than 4 months, and there have been continuous reports that the band's in town to finalize the staging of an unprecedented special peace performance for a mixed audience of Israelis and Palestinians. Enthusiastic local fans have been celebrating ever since rumors began to spread that Coldplay is planning to appear at an outdoor location north of the Dead Sea on November 3rd and 4th. The rockers are very popular here, especially since 2 of their recent videos were directed by Israelis. Martin's telling everyone to stay chill, though, saying that no concert has yet been scheduled and no contract has yet been signed, and that for the time being, he and his bandmates are only in the Holy Land to listen and learn. They're certainly more than welcome, but nothing's going to hold back on the rising hopes that we'll soon be able to do some up-close and personal listening to Coldplay of our own.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by the University of Haifa, Hebrew Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
All right, now for our Hebrew word of the day. Between the hundreds of Israeli designers and surprisingly IKEA, there are a lot of new styles on the market targeting those who are a little more modestly dressed. So today's word is tsanua, meaning modest or humble. While not everyone agrees on what an appropriately tsanua dress looks like, pretty much everyone agrees that it's often best to just generally be a tsanua person. After all, nobody likes someone who brags all the time, and besides, as Chinese philosopher Confucius once said, He who speaks without modesty will find it difficult to make his words good. So remember to be honest and respect yourself and one another. Live and let live and be the best Tsanua person you can be. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 50 or 10 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, temperatures are set to become unseasonably warm with a high of 73 or 23 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.69 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at ILTV.tv. Thanks for watching and see you next time.